Ladies and gentlemen, imagine selling your first business for 7 figures by the age of 28 and then doing it again and then doing it again. Now, imagine doing it without chasing social media fame or burning yourself out. Well, today's guest has mastered the art of strategic authority building, and he's about to show us why everything you think you know about becoming an industry leader, yep, it might be completely wrong. Here's what I want you to think about. What happens when you combine the mind of a manufacturing mogul, the skills of a home shopping network pitchman, and the strategic genius of a media mastermind? Well, today's guest, Mitch Carson, has done just that. He turned his first business into a 7-figure exit by 28, then did it again, selling his second company to Waste Management. But here's where I think things really get interesting. Instead of retiring on the beach sipping Mai Tai somewhere, he kept redefining himself, reinventing himself, failing forward, and building new empires. From manufacturing household products to becoming a TV show host on NBC, he has mastered the art of strategic reinvention. While others were out there chasing visibility, he quietly helped over 600 entrepreneurs transform their experience into authority, and that authority into profit. After building and selling multiple companies, he retired, he says with air quotes, to Peru, only to land a $96,000 consulting contract from a book he had written years earlier, all again while sipping coffee. And now he's here to show us why most entrepreneurs are working way too hard at being visible and aren't working hard enough at being valuable. Today, he's pulling back the curtain on what it takes to position yourself as an authority in the market, even when, well, maybe it's especially when nobody knows who the hell you are in the first place. If you're tired of shouting into the void and ready to learn the strategic way to stand out, you're going to want to take notes on today's episode. Mitch, man, how you doing today? Welcome to the Dark Horse Entrepreneur Podcast.
I want to meet the guy you described. You did it with flair, Tracy. Wow. I think you have a future in radio for sure.
He's an amazing person, isn't he?
Wow. Well, great to be here. I'm excited to go down this path with you and share what I have accomplished. And more important, my failures, because I think that is where people can learn quite a bit.
Right.
I don't have the Midas touch. I have the action touch, and I have failed my way to success many times, and I have failed more than I've succeeded.
It seems true to me that so many folks that I know you have a podcast as well, that we are lucky enough to listen to and to chat with across our diverse backgrounds. That's usually the case. It's not like they had some amazing moment of epiphany, where the sun opened up and the beam of light of God came down on them and says, here's what you shall do. It's usually about those trips, those falls, those fumbles, those bumbles, and those face plants that we stand up from that allow us to, like I said in the intro, fail forward and do more. Does that make sense?
100% agree. No risk, no reward, no pain, no gain.
No pain, no gain. That's right. So I want to start our conversation off right out of the gates. As I mentioned in the intro, is that you sold your first business for 7 figures at the ripe old age of 28. But instead of retiring, you kept building and selling businesses. So inside of that, here's the question I want to kick us off with. What drives someone to keep starting over when they could have literally just cashed out?
I retired briefly, got fat, drank coffee, was living in Chiang Mai, Thailand at that point, had a motorbike, wore flip-flops, fit into the local scene of the expats who were working digitally. I worked on occasion. When I say retired, I didn't fully retire where I sat and got drinks served to me by beautiful women with no tops. That wasn't the case. I was living in Thailand with my motorbike, which was great, and lived a free life, and then got incredibly bored.
Mm-hmm.
What saved me was understanding a friend from LA, more like an acquaintance, somebody I knew, commented on the post I made on Facebook some years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was 2015. I was happily retired, so I thought I was happy. And I bragged about how much money I saved by exposing a bag of laundry that was yay big. So it was about, let's say 14, 16 inches tall, folded in a plastic bag. And I paid $1 for it. I disclosed that on my Facebook post. I said, this is the life I live. Look how inexpensive it is to live here. and I get to save all this money instead of have it laundered in Los Angeles, where I come from, what I would have paid there. He responded, what happened to your mindset of wealth and abundance versus now you've turned into somebody who's focused on saving money, not making money? Struck me.
Good question.
Struck me. I said, wow, I have now become a cheap mindset person, expat, living in Thailand with all these other people who work on their laptops. I've had a very successful career, and I have downgraded myself. Not that there's anything wrong with what they're doing, because that's fine for some people who've chosen that lifestyle. And I did choose that for a while. And I realized I'm not through yet. I still want to go and conquer and create. So that changed my geography from Chiang Mai to Bangkok. Bangkok is New York City in Asia. Buzzing, moving. The mindset is different than people that are in Chiang Mai. And then more doors opened, and I got back into the thick of it, started producing events. Before I knew it, I was working again full time, and have not looked back. Loved it. And I still have a place in Bangkok. I'm here in Las Vegas today, so I go back and forth. I just got back 2 days ago, as a matter of fact. I was over there producing a couple events I ran in Singapore, and then I spend my time in Bangkok for a living. And it was a wake-up call to me of there's a lot to do, and golf is overrated, but certainly will get you to the chiropractor for low back pain. If you want to swing a club all day, it just didn't feed my mind. And I've read the statistic. Most men die within 5 years of retirement. And I'm not ready to die. I didn't want to retire fully, and I felt like my brain was diminishing by the minute. Without that stimulation, I think the body falls as well. The brain drives everything. So I got back in the thick of working, creating opportunities, and helping other people. I run a very small business today of publicity business here in Las Vegas, where I get people on television guaranteed, because I know that that's essential when someone wants to raise their credibility. Traditional media still garners the greatest amount of credibility and respect. Podcasting is growing. We're both podcasters. I'm a guest and a host. I believe in it. But when the people who are the decision makers with the most amount of money are the baby boomers, they will respect television more than they will a podcast. That's changing. I think in 10 years, there might be parity, but today it's still television.
Agreed. I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, coming from my generation, I'm going to guess probably yours as well. TV in our youth was the big thing, right?
It was
first there was radio. Radio was the golden standard, and then TV steps in and starts stealing away from radio. And then for quite a number of years, there was parity between the two, and then TV really took off like a gun. But I want to dig in something, because you clearly, with that Facebook post, had I'll call it an epiphany moment.
Yes.
Whether it was thrust upon you or you had it by yourself, where you were like, okay, it's not time to exit. It's really time to double down, kind of thing, right? How can the average listener right now, maybe they're restarting, kickstarting their side hustle, their business, how can they perhaps get that insight that you were able to get to answer the question of how do I know when it's time to exit versus time to double down, put my nose to the grindstone type of thing?
Exit, I don't know, because I don't even want to consider that again. I know that I am working. I don't know when it's time to exit. I know during my sports career, because my body told me when it was time to exit. So I had to exit because of when I blew my knee out and then I had all these physical problems. That was forced exit. To choose to retire and play shuffleboard or checkers, that doesn't interest me. For some, it's fine. They may have had a tough career, and that is what they want, is simplicity and living in a place with other seniors and doing activities and slow yoga, whatever it is.
Right.
I don't want to address that. I want to address accomplishing and maybe balancing some work with charities, because that is part of my program today, charitable work. So I do like to keep involved helping other people today. That shifted with age. I think maybe that came with maturity. And
probably, yeah.
All right, it's time to give back. I came from take to, I can give a little bit now. It's much more, what can I give back for life purposes?
Nice. Yeah, it's funny. I think one of the things that actually prompted me to ask that question is my wife and I have been binge watching the old Shark Tank show. I say old. We went back and started from the very beginning, and I
Yeah, but
started noticing probably season 5 or 6 a shift in the entrepreneurs that were coming on, and so many of them were building to the exit. And there was a lot of comments from the sharks in there about what's your exit plan? And I'm sitting there looking at my phone. If I was doing that, I'm not building it to exit. I'm building it to give, to do, to build more, whatever it is. Would an exit be eventual? Possibly, but I'm not sure you build to exit because it's almost like you're building to the wrong goal. Does that make sense?
Yes, certain people do build to exit or for legacy or for retirement planning. And I guess it's to hand off to their kids, maybe to
Right.
keep that, if you're in the buggy whip business, you probably be out of business. If you have to be in the right
Let's
business
pivot, right?
to create that. I don't, the first business I sold is because I reached a level and I got offered a good amount of money and I left. The second, we invested in the recycling business in order to sell it. And that was an exit plan, but I was in my 30s at that point.
Hmm.
The last business that I sold, I would still have it today, but a divorce forced that sale.
Yeah, been there, felt that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I went through that. That was forced upon me. I would still have the business today because
Sure.
it was profitable. I enjoyed it and walked away because I had to. So
Gotcha.
that was today. I handle things on my own terms. I still work hard by most standards, but not as hard as I did.
Hmm.
And I believe for someone to consider getting into their own business, because I think probably there are some people who are in corporate in your audience that may be looking at, hey, when do you pull the trigger to where you leave that job?
Yeah.
Say, have a nest egg. Don't do what I did. I left. What meaning? I think it's helpful to have a good plan. I like to plan. Some cases in my life, I've shot from the hip and trusted myself. That's dangerous. And if you've got responsibilities of children and a
Yeah.
spouse to look after, not necessarily the best plan. I did
Mhm.
this while I was still single, so I could do that.
Nice.
Now, I like to have, I would say, a good at least 6 months to a year worth of cash flow available,
Mhm.
in addition to what it takes to run your business or to launch an entrepreneurial venture, and maybe run it part-time until you build up and you see it creating enough cash flows to where you can leave your secure job.
Yeah.
That would be
Yep.
my comment.
Yeah,
That's the
totally.
responsible way to go about it, unless you are let go and you're forced to sink or swim. That's a different.
It's funny is I see a number of folks falling into that category, especially after all the hubbubaloo of 2020 that went on. A number of folks decided, okay, now it's time to dive in because that's what was available at the time. And I actually experienced it one other time back in my Coca-Cola days. After one of the major CEOs had passed away, Mr. Goizueta, yeah, Mr. Goizueta passed away, and he had been the CEO of Coca-Cola and just run it like a champ. I mean, it was doing amazing things. And they went through 3 or 4 CEOs over the course of the next 2 or 3 years. And it seemed like every time a new CEO popped up, it was all about a round of head cuts. And I
Mm.
saw a number of amazing people get heads on the chopping block. Now, mind you, they got nice exit packages as a result. However, it doesn't make it any easier, right? One of my friends actually took that exit package and had done something they had been talking to me about for some time, and they bought a franchise of a childcare facility. And I went to visit them at their newly built facility, probably, I don't know, 18 months after they had departed. And I had never seen her so happy in my entire life. And I had known her for like 5 years at that point. And we were chatting it up. I'm like, okay, so are you working less now? And she's like, no, I'm actually working more, but I'm enjoying it. And it wasn't that, oh my God, things are awful, things are great, but I want to put in less hours. There was this, she was beaming. And if you believe in auras, you could almost see the glow coming off her. It was amazing. And it's always amazing for me to see people do that, whether it's through choice or not choice, right? One form or another. But one of the things I want to make sure we get into, and I only have you for a short period of time, is one of these things I know you're great at. So
Sure.
obviously, I mentioned it earlier. You had that $96,000 consulting contract that popped up while you were he says in air quotes, retired in Peru from a book you had written years earlier. For my dark horse entrepreneurs that are maybe feeling a little bit invisible right now, what, pray tell, is the secret to becoming that go-to authority in their space, whatever that space might be?
Okay, this is a multi-part answer.
Okay.
But I'll provide it in stages.
Okay.
And it would have been a different answer 10, 15 years ago. Today, the answer is very clear to me.
Mhm.
If you, it depends on the niche, of course, but I will give a standard answer
Okay.
subject to some editing and tailoring based on the niche. If you are an entrepreneur who is global or national, you're going to need a strong LinkedIn profile and maybe a LinkedIn business profile as well, in addition to the personal. You need a YouTube channel. So your personal branding for the solopreneur early at that level or business needs to be very strong and super duper clear what problem you solve. What is your message to the market? And it's clearly defined where they get it. Fresh, hot pizza delivered in 30 minutes or less, or your order is free. Domino's. So they had
Yes.
the unique selling proposition because drivers were getting in crashes. That's why they changed it. But it was very clear what they delivered. Fresh, hot pizza, 30 minutes guaranteed. So what service do you offer? What is your elevator pitch? Is it clear so people know what to expect from you? Do you manage the expectations? Is your messaging congruent across all platforms? So are you on YouTube? Are you on Instagram? Do you TikTok? Do you have a podcast? Is it clear who your audience is with your podcast? We briefly went over that a little bit before we hit the record button
Sure.
on this show. And it's clear. I only handle CEOs, authors, and speakers. That's my market. If you work in accounting in the payroll department of a Fortune 100 company, I'm not necessarily the best choice for what I offer clients today, because I teach people how to speak and sell from the stage. I guarantee them media on major networks here in Las Vegas. That's my deliverable. It's defined and clear. If you want to get booked on a podcast in Asia, I'm not the guy. It's
Yeah,
different.
no, that's a fair distinction. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for most business owners, they need to have a strong social media presence with the basics of Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and a solid website clearly laying out what it is that you offer to your audience.
Gotcha.
needs-
Okay, so
so
that's
that's-
that's some very specific guidance. No, and thank you. Here's one. Let's dig a little bit deeper into that same one. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see some of the entrepreneurs out there, be they local or national or global, making as they try to position themselves as that subject matter expert? Let's say they are that I'm that pizza delivery guy, or I'm the podcast guy. Let's use that as an example. What mistakes do you see those dark horse entrepreneurs out there making as they try to position themselves as the authority?
Well, you slipped and said author.
Yeah.
If they don't have a book, they're not the expert, because
Okay.
the competition does. And even today, I'm in the process of writing a series of books on the public speaking business, including media. All the things that I deliver are going to validate and credentialize me in what I'm doing today. I've written 18 books in the past. Most are not published. I use them as tools to sell from the stage. You get my book that's not available anywhere else.
Same here.
So if you are, in fact, claiming, if you've got the expertise, you're the greatest basket weaver in the world,
Right.
and you have a book to credentialize yourself, you're missing out. The book automatically positions you as an expert. A series of books in the category makes you almost untouchable, because most won't go that extra mile. It's important. So you need the book, you need the media, as in being covered on network television, you need the radio, you need podcast interviews, as in plural, multiple,
Right.
to make sure that people, when they look at your site, oh, Mitch was featured on the Dark Horse. Wow, he must be something. He was featured on Wish List, Joe Rogan's podcast.
Right.
He must be super important, because they would associate me with Elon Musk, who's been on there. Mike Tyson has been on there. President Trump has been on there. The list is long. And I think you have to go the extra mile, and being covered, also written up and have an article that has been about you in Forbes or the Wall Street Journal or all these other publications. I found in order to be the undisputed expert in my niche, I needed to check the right boxes.
Mm.
My clients need to check the right boxes. To be on a podcast, to be on your podcast, you researched me before I earned the right to be interviewed by you.
I did. Yes.
And you did a thorough job and a great intro, and I'm going to borrow elements from that when I get the recording. 'Cause you did
100%.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Did a great job. However, I earned all of those credentials in order to be on your show. What happens when somebody has a clean slate, a blank slate? That
Mhm.
took years to put all that together. This wasn't an overnight job. Took me years. I've been in the Wall Street Journal. I've been covered in Entrepreneur Magazine. I've been covered in Huffington Press, all of these publications, because I ticked the boxes when
Mhm.
they became available and I made it happen. I forced the publicity because I know what publicity will do for people and what it did for me. And if you are associated with that, your brand value goes up. The way I like to describe it, which what most people can relate to, is are you positioned in a Tiffany box or are you positioned in a Target box?
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Explain that one a little bit.
All right. You're married, Tracy.
I am.
Matt, go back in time to when your wife, what's her name?
Diane.
Diane. If you were dating Diane and you wanted her to become your fiance, and you're American like me, we are compelled to get down on one knee unless you've had knee surgery. We get down on one knee and say, I want to make you a permanent fixture in my life.
Mhm.
The spiel, essentially. If you open up and pull out this box and it's wrapped in blue and white paper, you're getting a back rub at the end of the night.
Yes.
If you, however, have red paper with a circle on it,
Circle.
Target, you might get kicked in the teeth.
Yeah.
And it's all about packaging and perceived value. It's a matter of your wife or your girlfriend at the point before she said yes, and now she is Mrs. Brinkman. She made a decision based on how you presented your package to her
Mhm.
and the value you gave her based on the size of the ring, the cut, in many cases, not all cases. Some
Yeah.
people were tied.
The
to
overall package, even beyond the
overall-
ring. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole package. Will he be the right person for me?
Hmm.
It matters. People
Yeah.
buy on perception. If I pull up to Coca-Cola corporate in Atlanta and I'm driving a beat up Chevy Vega from the 70s, you remember that car?
I do.
Yeah, the Vega, and it's pulled into the visitor section and you've got a window view seeing who it is, the salesman that comes in to pitch you on their products. And I'm talking about high grade, high quality personal branding. And my car is dirty. It's missing a hubcap, got a crack in the windshield.
Right.
It's an old Vega. It's not a classic. It's classically old and beat up,
Right.
not maintained. If it was a classic and beautiful and polished, that's one thing versus if I come in with a nice Lexus that is
Yeah.
it looks the part to match my message.
100%.
See this, you're going to have a bias before I sign in reception.
Yeah. Yeah. That even brings the example. I mean, even if we loop back to the example of the getting down on the knee and bringing out that box, was it the pretty blue and whites? And as soon as you said blue and white, I could picture the Tiffany box. And those images they're deep. They're ingrained within us as we grow up through society. Quick story is during the courting process, I always try to be myself with whomever I'm around, and especially someone that I would courting, in the example of my wife. But there were facets that I did withhold. And my wife is a very intelligent person. And in her research, because we met first online and we were separated by thousands of miles. She was in the San Francisco Bay Area and I was in Ohio at the time. And so she was doing diligent research to make sure I wasn't some pervert or stalker or serial killer or whatever. We've all seen that movie. And so pieces of what I had withheld, not lied, but I withheld, chipped away at her trust of me. So it was a piece of that presentation. My Vega wasn't polished. It had nicks in it and it had that hole that she needed to have filled before she was willing to trust me. So, I mean, that was an amazing example. Here's something for our folks out there. I know so many of them, because you talked about, let's get the articles, let's get you in front of cameras, and specifically yours was network television and on podcasts, and you're on Insta and you got LinkedIn, and so many of them are out there working too hard to be visible, and they're not working smart enough to be valuable, right?
Hmm.
There's a
Hmm.
distinction in there, right?
Visible versus
You
value.
find, do you find most of them miss it, that distinction? And what, in your opinion, is that distinction they need to make sure that they get right?
Visible is one thing and valuable is another. You can be visible and be shaking your buttocks on TikTok. That could go viral, or
Yep.
you're drinking or smoking pot. I don't think if you're selling to a conservative company like Johnson and Johnson,
Mm.
as an example, I think they're in the Midwest somewhere close to
I believe so,
you.
yeah.
Yeah. If they do a social media check on you, which they will today, everything is visible,
Yep.
and they see you ticky-talking, shaking your booty, smoking marijuana, and drinking and partying with your friends at the local pub, that may not go over well. So you are truly visible, but you have decreased and diminished your value.
Mm-hmm.
Value is associated with high perceived value, high, well positioned value.
Mm-hmm.
And are you in a publication of Playboy or were you in Forbes?
Right.
Both provide visibility, but one has greater value for the business person than the other.
100%. Yeah.
If you
Could be the
sell,
same article even, right?
if you have an article on, I don't even know if Playboy's around anymore.
I don't know either.
Yeah, I'm only, hey,
We're
okay,
dating ourselves, obviously.
sure. So let's just call it let's say an adult magazine
Mhm.
or adult publication. You wrote an article in that, and then you have an article that is about you in Forbes, and you're calling on Johnson and Johnson. Which one do you want to display?
Right.
Both provide exposure / visibility, but the readers are vastly different
100%.
in many cases.
Yeah. So here's what I heard in that, and I know you didn't say it outright, is while you're out there positioning yourself to be visible, let's use a moniker of wisdom and caution on what platforms and what formats you're doing this in. Is that a fair? Yeah. Okay. Good. Good.
What
It makes sense. And I think to most folks that'd be like, well, duh. But I think there's a handful of folks that just forget, wow, people will come on here and they will see me tiki talking, shaking my booty and doing whatever else that might not be a great reflection, right? And it's not what you want. So here's one, and I know from my research, your background is probably as vast as mine because I went from Coca-Cola to Home Depot to Victoria's Secrets to David's Bridal to La Senza to Legendary Whitetails to Frontgate. I mean, I think I covered the gamut when it came to.
Oh, that's a name from the past.
There you go, right? So I covered the gamut on different verticals as well as manufacturing to customer service to B2B. And you did a lot of the same, but I noticed that you kept reinventing yourself multiple times because you went from manufacturing to marketing and marketing to media. As you did that, what's the one constant that you found when it came to building your authority across and across different industries?
Well, one was more of a corporate presence. Everything is marketing. Without traffic, there is no business. When I was in manufacturing, how I got into that was by accident. My uncle, who was my only remaining relative because of my history, my background, owned a plastics manufacturing company.
Mhm.
Maybe he saw The Graduate and said, and there was that scene from Dustin Hoffman being interviewed or being told by an older, distinguished businessman, plastics, young man, the future is in plastics. Well, bought into that was injection molding, industrial America. My uncle's company, he owned it. He was out in New York. I was assigned to run his plastics manufacturing plant in Gardena, California, which is a suburb of Los Angeles.
Mhm.
And I was given this task after I sold my recycling business to Waste Management. And he said, it's time you come and help me out because he owned multiple businesses. And I took on the task. I knew nothing about plastics, but I learned.
Sure.
And what I learned quickly is there are machines that have to be kept busy. When you're in manufacturing, you must run those machines. It's all about machine hours.
Yeah.
And it was a 24/7 operation. We ran 7 days a week, except for major holidays shut down. But the rest of the time, those machines had to run in order to cover overhead and, of course, yield a profit.
Right.
And they weren't at the time I came in. And I realized, okay, how do I get these machines busy? Through marketing, through getting inventors to bring in their products to get manufactured by us because we had distribution and we had manufacturing capabilities
Mm,
because we had a housewares line that was in all the big box retailers back then.
okay.
Walmart, Home Depot, Bed Bath and Beyond. These are some brands that were around back then. This was early 80s and or early 90s. It was early 90s, excuse me. And I then went and found inventors who had products, but no distribution, no manufacturing. They had an idea. So I said, why don't you manufacture with us? And we'll showcase your products at the National Houseware Show, which is in Chicago every January, and then maybe the hardware show, which is during the summer, also at McCormick Place in Chicago. And I said, we can be your one-stop solution. Well, the booth was never busier. Yeah, this 10 by 60 booth, and it was flooded with traffic because we had all these new products to show that weren't our own. There were other people.
Sure.
Where we gave them a royalty based on sales, cost us nothing, and we were able to work synergistically. We provided the marketing, the manufacturing, and distribution. And what I found to be key, and the engineering department and customer service, they hate to admit their importance, is second to sales.
Hmm.
Without sales, there is no blood.
Exactly.
The machine, the body doesn't exist without blood. You need fresh blood to come in to provide the nutrition for all the other organs. And I'll say accounting might be your spine. Yeah, it manages the finances. The
Sure.
heart is your customer service department. But without the blood, which is fresh sales, none of that functions.
Yeah.
And that's what I found. No, the salesperson is underappreciated in most companies because they make it rain.
Yeah.
Without rain, there is no crop.
Agreed. Yeah.
And that's what I have found over my years in business.
Sales in any endeavor is the key. Otherwise, it's really not an endeavor. It's kind of a hobby, right?
Right. Hard to eat without any food.
And so many people, I think they get caught up in I don't want to seem like a slimy salesperson. Okay, well, then just don't be a slimy salesperson. Because if I come to you and I say, hey, Mitch, I got a great idea here for you. You told me about this problem you have. I found the perfect solution for it. Am I being slimy? No, I'm just saying, hey, you told me you had a problem. I found a solution. All you got to do to get me to give you that solution is let go of a little cash. Nothing slimy about that. Everybody wins. You get your problem solved. I get a little coin to go on living, to do it again. I think people just use that, I don't know, call it an excuse. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. So I want to be mindful of your time, and we can go in here.
Perfect.
I could probably just chat you up for hours, but I want to pick your brain for one last little piece of advice. So you mentioned earlier kind of the framework you would pose for folks, be visible. Let's see if we can get you to give them one strategic move that they could do. Heck, as soon as you say it, they hit pause on the podcast and they go do it. One strategic move could they make like right away to start positioning themselves as an authority?
The easiest way for most businesses, I'm generalizing because it would depend on the business,
Of course.
start writing an article for their local newspaper
Oh,
and not get paid. Not get paid. Start commenting on the articles that already be written by staff writers right now and also on their online publications. And then say, I'd love to contribute a column to you and not get paid. It's free. In every city, I would even imagine in your small town, there's got to be a local newspaper.
there is, and I read it.
Yes, I do too. I like that. And the people with money still read newspapers.
Yep.
I don't know exactly how old you are. I'm a baby boomer and
Same.
I grew up reading newspapers. There's value in print and it provides legacy for people as
Mhm.
well. It then can be repurposed for social media later. That's a way to start. I am a writer for, written for, and then that can be a leverageable asset to get into more national publications. If you're a big city, find a newspaper that's from an outlying city
Mhm.
and write it for them. And that's a whole can of worms, but that's the standard answer I would give as a
Sure. It's funny you mentioned that is when I started, I'll call it my coaching career, and this would be back, gosh, in the 90s. So papers were still a thing and magazines were a big thing. And I didn't go the newspaper route. What I did is I started going to little niche magazines. And when I say going to them, I did just what you said is I would write an article and I wrote a base article. And then when I would see this niche magazine, like one of them that I did, and I ended up getting published in it for quite some time, it was about hobbyist flyers, people that would fly as a hobby, right? Whether they owned a plane or not, they would go to an airport and they would fly. And there was a niche little magazine for that hobby flyer, hobby pilot. And I got a number of my personal development articles published in that magazine because I did just what you said. I just wrote the article and then I saw, all right, let me tweak some of the language and use their terms, like how to come in on that flight path of your goal. And using those little niche terms really made it resonate with their audience. And they're like, sure. Do you have any more? Actually, I sent it via mail. And so I got the letter back. And I'm like, happy to. So I probably got 15, 20 articles over a year and a half published in a few different magazines doing just what you said. So I think it still works today. And just because they might not print as many papers and magazines, they're still online. They're still serving an audience that wants to hear your message. That's my thought.
100%. And it's a great place to start. I mean, I could talk endlessly about what's the next step, this step, this step.
Mhm.
That's a good place to start.
100%. And if folks want to learn more about Mitch, because I know this is what you do, ladies and gentlemen. Mitch is the man when it comes to getting you visibility that you need. Again, you mentioned earlier CEOs and business owners, and what was the other? You mentioned 3.
Authors and speakers.
Authors and speakers. So if this is your area, Mitch, let them know where they can reach out to you and learn more about your services and and what you offer.
Getinterviewedguaranteed.com/meet with Mitch. That's where you can schedule a call and we can chat.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy. We're going to make sure we get your links down in the show notes so they can just click and catch right up with you. Mitch, I definitely appreciate your time. You've dropped some amazing bombs here, something I don't think my folks have heard before, and I know they need to pay attention to.
Well, thanks for having me, Tracy.
Yeah,
Take care.
right back at you, man. Bye-bye.